Welcome to a series that we call The End of Times, where we go through the book Revelation verse by verse to try our best to understand what it is we can expect to happen in the end times, or the times Jesus refers to as the end of the age. And we've been going through Revelation verse by verse. And where we are at the point now is John had been taken up to the throne room of God, where we're able to look around. He notices God has a scroll in his hand with 7 seals. And it is only Jesus Christ who is worthy to open those seals. And at this point, we are now on the 6th seal of these 7 seals. And we're just going to jump right in. So Revelation 6:12. I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave, every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? So there's quite a bit going on in these 4 or 5 verses, and this particular event is brought up multiple times throughout Scripture, and it's brought up at least 4 times, I believe 5 times in Revelation alone. But one of the greatest places that we can go to kind of get an idea of what's happening during this during this time of tribulation is to go to Matthew 24, where Jesus speaks about it. And if we take a look at Matthew 24, verse 29, Jesus says, Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So here Jesus is describing what's going to happen when the 6th seal is broken. Now, before we kind of go into more detail of what's taking place here, I want to say in advance that this 6th seal, Revelation 12 through 17, all of chapter 7 and chapter 8, 1 through 6, are all kind of happening at the same time. And this is what's taking place here is ultimately the end of tribulation. So again, if we go back to Matthew 24, immediately after the tribulation, those days the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. So here we are, we're at the end of tribulation, but I just want to kind of talk about all these events are taking place at the same time. And we're going to talk about these particular events. Next week we're going to get into more of a timeline of when this happens. When does darkness fall on the earth, and how long will it take place, and what takes place in that time. But I just want to take this episode and talk about all these events that are kind of taking place simultaneously, and what is this event, because it's a very significant event. So significant that, again, it's brought up in Revelation multiple times, and it's brought up throughout the Bible multiple times. Isaiah saw this event. Daniel saw this event. So Jesus talked about this event. So let's just kind of go through this again real quick, and I'm going to jump through these chapters quickly to show you that kind of all this is happening at the same time. So let's read again chapter 6, 12 through 17. I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, and the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks on the mountains. Said to the mountains and the rocks, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand. Now let's jump ahead to 7. We're going to read verses 1 through 4. After these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or on any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our gods on their foreheads. So here we got this 6th seal breaking, but an angel saying, now hold on a second. We got to mark all these people. And then immediately when we jump into 7:9, so they're marking the 144,000 Jews, which we'll get to another time. And then immediately in 9 it says, after these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude, which no one could number, of all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, saying, salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And then let's jump to 7:14. So he said to me, these are the ones who come out of the great tribulation, and washed their robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So ultimately, everything's just kind of put on hold for a moment. It's just like this massive pause. And again, go back to Matthew 24:25. Immediately after the tribulation, those days the sun will be darkened, the moon will give off no light, and the stars fell from heaven. So everything, so God said, these angels are saying, wait, we got to mark the Jews, we got to mark the Gentiles. So they're marking the 2 witnesses to protect them from this event. And let's just then jump to chapter 8, verses 1 through 6. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the altar, and he was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, with the prayers of the saints, ascended before the God and from the angels. Never doubt the power of your prayers, by the way. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth, and there was noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. And then we get into the prelude of the trumpets, and, essentially if you jump to 8:10, then the 3rd angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on the earth of the rivers and on the springs of the water. And the name of the star is Wormwood. And then jump to 12, the 4th angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that the third of them were darkened. And a third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. So what ultimately takes place here is, and we'll be reading way more detail into what's happening here, but if we go back to 6:12 through 17, what's taking place here is he breaks the 6th seal, and then all of a sudden there's this, what I believe is a meteor striking the earth. And we'll kind of get to that here in a little bit later, and we're going to dedicate our entire next episode to that. But then an angel says, now hold on a second, let's mark everybody, let's mark the saints. I believe that is when the rapture of the church occurs. This is the end of the tribulation. Then there's about a half hour of silence in heaven, and then God's wrath is unleashed on the earth. This is a very significant thing. But so how long will this go on? What is this kind of thing that's taking place here? Now, I just want to kind of say that this event is brought up a few times in the Bible, because you can't read the Bible like a story from beginning to end. It brings up the same event several times, so we can see it from different views and get a deeper understanding of what's taking place here. But if you jump back to Isaiah 13:1, Isaiah saw this exact same particular event in 13:1, the burden against Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz saw. And then let's jump to 9 and 10. Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel with both wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he will destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. Now, this is a very significant event because what's taking place here is, I believe, we are seeing the beginning of the destruction of Babylon, and this is very significant because if we jump ahead to the destruction of Babylon, in Revelation 18:21, it says, "Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down and shall not be found anymore." And ultimately what we're seeing here in Revelation 6, verse 12 through 17, is we're kind of getting this first glance of just a really significant disturbance on the earth from meteors. Now, ultimately, what happens scientifically if a meteor was to hit the earth is a fiery dust cloud would completely darken the earth. And it would send up, just like if you threw a rock into a puddle, it sends up drops of water splashing out all directions like that, except for fire and brimstone going up and then raining back down on the earth and completely covering the earth with a cloud for a significant amount of time. To where it's just completely dark, and that's the only way I can see it, just a cloud, just dust of completely rolling up the sun as if you're pulling a shade down, which is what they describe. And then we're going to dedicate next episode to focusing on how long does this happen, when does this take place, because I believe that Daniel 8:13 through 14 tells us exactly how long this takes place, or when it's going to begin, and then also it clearly says in Revelation how long this will take place as well. And both Daniel 8:13 and 14 agree with Revelation on the timeline as well. And it's very significant because what we're talking about is talking about kind of the end of civilization as we know it, regardless of the wars and the tribulation and the famine that's taking place on the earth. You haven't seen nothing until, because those are all humans doing it. Now God and his spiritual warriors are allowing it to take place, but it's humans doing it. This is a different story. This is the wrath and the judgment of God raining down on earth, and that is why this is such a significant event, and it has to be talked about several times in Revelation, and we're definitely going to dedicate at least one more episode to this, specifically so we can get into, well, when does this meteor hit the earth, and then how long does this darkness and burning take place? So we'll look at that next episode. I hope this is helping, because this particular event, I'm trying to make this as easy as possible to understand Revelation 6, 12 through 17, because this event is very, very significant. And as we read through the bowls of judgment and the trumpets, that's kind of what we're seeing happening here. This seal's just kind of summoning it up in 5 verses, but it is there's a lot of detail given in the Word of God of what's taking place when God unleashes his wrath and judgment on the earth. So there you go. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support our channel through Patreon, that link is below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.